my talks on fantasy. I'm Anna Ross, the founder and director of Kester, and we are Australia's fastest growing nail polish company. We're changing the beauty industry by creating ethically produced, cruelty-free cosmetics, which is exciting. We have recently become the first cosmetics company in the whole world to get B Corp certified. So if you guys don't know what B Corp is, check it out. That unites us with other businesses that are using business for the power of business to create a positive impact on the world. So it's really exciting, a really difficult accreditation to get. It took me a whole year, but we got there in the end. So often I get asked about where the name Kester came from, so I thought I'd just start with a little story about that. I'm from New Zealand, if you can't tell already, and I was working with some friends in Blenheim on a vineyard. And every day after work, we used to luckily take their boat out and go wakeboarding in the Marlborough Sounds. One day we were in a beautiful bay called St. Kester Bay, and I was trying to wakeboard. I'm shit at wakeboarding, just don't tell me, I'm just so awful at wakeboarding. So we pulled the boat up on the shore, and a priest popped out of the bush. So 10 priests pop out of the bush this day. And it was just the most fucking bizarre thing I've ever seen. And, you know, you go through design school, they tell you don't ever use religious connotations in your name. So I used the name Kester from St. Kester Bay in black because they were all dressed in black robes. I got an email from the guy, one of the brothers at St. Mary's Church in New Zealand, and he goes, I've just been Googling this, I needed a photo of St. Kester Bay, so I Googled one. This picture came up and I read the story about where your name came from. So we sent in like an internal newsletter to everybody at St. Mary's in New Zealand and just thought it was the funniest story ever. Cool, so let's get on to what I'm really here for today, and that's to talk about fantasy. So what is fantasy? A fantasy refers to impossible or improbable things. They exist only within the imagination of ourselves or others. So here are a few examples. We've got animal tales, talking toys, magic, alternative worlds, enchanting quests, the supernatural, spaceships, and I've saved the best for last, everybody's favourite, romance. It's one of my favourite movies. So, as you can see, engaging in fantasy is a great way to distract us from reality, providing a much-needed break from our daily routines. When I was younger, I was about 11 when Harry Potter came out, and I remember just racing home from school every day, because school was awful for me, as I'm sure it was for most people here, and just like opening up Harry Potter in my backyard, having a nice lie down in the backyard in the sun and reading Harry Potter. So that's sort of where my fantasy sort of started. I also used to like cruise around town in New Zealand, and one day I found a $5 note on the street, and it was probably the best fucking day of my life. So I found this $5 note, and I was like, wouldn't it be amazing if I found a whole bag of money? Like there was just like a deal that had gone wrong, and there was a whole bag there. And then so every day after that day that I found $5, every time I went to town with Mum, I was looking for the bag of money. And you can imagine how much time I wasted doing that. So for me, fantasy can present itself as a bit of an avoiding strategy, and as a creative, I don't need to be off task at all. So, imagination, on the other hand, is something that I can use to manifest my ideas into reality, and that's what I'd like to focus on today. I want to show you a few ways of how I've used it in my business. So, imagination. One way to consider imagination is the ability of the mind to create or be resourceful. It is a means of forming new ideas, images, or concepts of which objects don't exist yet. While fantasy can distract from productivity and innovation, imagination is one of the greatest driving forces behind innovation. So I want to share today with you all a bit of my story, to give you a sense of how I've used imagination to be able to grow my business to where it is today. So, from a young age, I always imagined myself as a famous fashion designer. like from the age of about 5, I knew I was going to design clothes. I'm a super tactile person. I touch everything when I go into a store, and I like go for the colour blocks. So I got kicked out of school. I got expelled from high school, so I went straight to university to study fashion. Loved it. It was awesome. And then I knew that I would be graduating with 30 other students from my class, and I just needed to get an edge over them as soon as possible. So I started making my own little fashion label. First it started with hoodies for my lucky sister here. She's got about 100 hoodies. And then I decided I was gonna stock at the best shop in town. So I made some clothes, and I really just imagined my clothes being in there. I used to go in there and touch the clothes all the time, and maybe about a year later, they decided that they'd stock my stuff. So I made a whole range of menswear. I sold it to this store in Dunedin in New Zealand, and within a week they sold out, and it was just like, holy shit, I have a brand in a store. That's pretty cool. Like, you know, just a small girl from high school got kicked out, and I was actually like being noticed in Dunedin, so that was pretty cool. Then I decided I was going to be in New Zealand Fashion Week. So there's a bit of a jump there. So I told everybody I'd been accepted to New Zealand Fashion Week, and I hadn't. But I really believe that's where you start the manifestation, right? You tell everybody in a room that you're going to do something, and then you have to get your shit together to prove yourself. So I told everybody it was a New Zealand Fashion Week, and I just started making these collections. I applied, and they just said, oh, Anna, you've just presented a box, it's got some sheep bones in it, bit of sketches, you've actually not presented anything that we can use here. And I thought, oh my God, shit, I'm not going to be in New Zealand Fashion Week. Anyway, I made it there in the end, but I use manifestation, and the first thing that I do to manifest is tell people what my plan is. And then people rally around you. Oh, you want to do that? Yeah, I know somebody there. Yeah, I'll help you. I'll get you in. So I tell everybody what my idea is. A lot of people say don't do that, but I don't believe that. I think it's awesome to tell people your idea. And then that's like means getting your fucking ducks in the row, right? You can't just manifest and just expect it to happen, but you just really need to plant all the seeds in everybody's mind to help them get you to make it happen. So, in 2009, I moved to Melbourne to work in fashion. I knew I was going to work for a really famous fashion designer, so I was here for a couple of months, and I ended up working in retail, right? Because what do you do with a fashion degree? You work in retail. So, I was always on the lookout for a job, and I found a job for this awesome Australian brand, and I just knew that I was going to work for them. So I started telling people, I've got this job. I'm going to work for this really cool label. So I applied for the job, and then I got an email saying, oh, you know, you're really enthusiastic, but I just don't think you've got the skills that we need. I'm really sorry you didn't make it through to the interview stage. And I go, oh no, but I've told everybody I've got the job. So I emailed them back, and I said, oh, I think it's a really big mistake that you haven't interviewed me. I'm definitely the best for the job. Maybe you should give me a go. And they did. So I went for the interview, and they interviewed 19 people, and I got the job, right? So you just don't let anybody get in your way. So I worked there for a year, and then I had always been making my own jewellery label. So I got to the point where I finished up with that job, and I got offered a job for like $100,000 being the production manager at another fashion label here in Melbourne. And I thought, no, I've worked too hard for this. I'm just going to keep going with what I love. And I always wanted to be my own boss and not take direction from anybody else, hence why I got expelled from school. So we were making jewellery, and I got sick of working with silver. I needed something more, and I love colour. I just didn't know how to use it all. So I decided that I would paint my sterling silver rings, and I'd read somewhere online, you use enamel paint. And I was like, awesome. Went to Maya, bought a nail polish, and painted all of my fucking jewellery pink. It was awful. You can't get that shit off. So I ruined a whole lot of stuff. And then I was like, cool, imagine if you had cool matching nail polish to match your rings. And at the time, our rings were our most popular sellers. So I started looking into nail polish, and I was a bit sort of shocked with what I found. And I thought, I'm going to make a nail polish label. So I had a couple of girls come over for dinner one night. We all had a bottle of wine, and I said, what colours do you like? What name should we call them? What bottle should I have? And within about 2 hours, I'd had my new brand. So I launched that. There we go. Now that's imaginative nail art, isn't it? So once I started making nail polish and had a few successes in business, I decided that we needed to move out of my bedroom. I had staff, it was really weird. So I was like, I'm going to go for an office space. So I started looking at office spaces, and like pretty soon I'd found this amazing office space, like floor to ceiling windows in the middle of Collingwood, and it was beautiful. And I was like, yeah, this is the one. I saw the guy, I saw the space, holy shit, this is the one. But it was really expensive. And I just knew I just had imagined my whole setup in there. Like I knew what paintings were going to go where the desks were going to go, what I was going to do with the whole place. I just knew that that was the space. So I just decided that I'd play hard to get with the guy, right? So I emailed him, I was like, oh yeah, I'm really keen. And I go, oh no, because I don't want to pay that much. So I was like, oh yeah, now I'll think about it. And then he goes, hey Anna, so it's been 2 weeks now, do you want it? And I'm like, oh, I don't know, it's a bit expensive. And then he goes, oh well, I'll speak to the agent. What do you want it for? And I bargained and earned 20 grand a year. And I said, yeah, I'll sign if you give it to me for 20 grand less. And he's just like, okay, I'll see what I can do. So then the landlord comes back and he goes, yeah, you can have it for that price. And then I was like, oh, no, I think I want 3 months free rent as well. They gave it to me. I manifested the shit out of that, right? Just manifest anything you want and it will happen for you, because it has for me. Next, I realised that we need to expand a little bit. And what do you do when you're based in Melbourne? Next place to go? The US, right? Shopping trips to New York, it had to be the US. So I decided that we'd stock Urban Outfitters. So I told everybody we were going to stock at Urban Outfitters. So then we applied for Urban Outfitters. We were in negotiations with them for a whole year, and then it just all fell through. Couldn't get a response from anybody, and it was like quite embarrassing because I told everybody we were going to be stocking Urban Outfitters. And then 6 months later, Anthropology emails, who's owned by Urban Outfitters. And I said, they said, give us the best price. What's the best price? And I was just like, for you, $2 more than wholesale. So more expensive for the US market. They bought it. We just got stocked in Anthropology because I just manifested the shit out of it. I don't know where that comes from. So, finally, with the number of other copycats jumping on board in the nail polish scene these days, I was like, shit, we need something more. We need to do something else. So I was like, we need to collaborate. Who can we collaborate with? And I've been thinking Sophie Amoruso, and then Margot Robbie, anybody that I could sort of think of who is pretty cool and influential. And I was like, no, I need to go bigger. So I started manifesting a collaboration of sorts. I didn't know who with. And then this is only like 6 months ago that I started to do this. I was like, what's the next step for Kester Black? We need to go big, we need to collaborate. And then I get this email from Pantone. So Pantone emails me and asks if we want to collaborate. And I was like, awesome, this is amazing. So we start negotiating, and they say, if you want to release Pantone Colour of the Year, it's flat fee, $15,000 US. And I was like, I don't think so. But I had already told everybody we were collaborating with Pantone, so I needed to play the game a bit here. So anyway, back and forth negotiation, signed a contract a couple of days ago, paid the licensing fee, which is not $15,000, and we're the first Australian company to ever release a Pantone Colour of the Year this year. Fingers crossed, because it comes out in the first week of December, and I've just approved the samples, so the manufacturers need to get onto that shit straight away. But now that I've told you, it will happen. So, finally, this week's been a really big week for me, and I just want to share with you all how I managed to win the Australian Young Businesswoman of the Year and the Telstra Businesswoman's Award 2 days ago. So I've always seen the awards. I knew that they were the most prestigious awards in Australia for businesswomen, and I was like, yep, I'm going to enter that. And I looked at the entry form earlier this year, and I realised, oh no, the only category I'm eligible for, because these women are fucking amazing, is the young businesswomen's, and I'm like just about to reach the cutoff. So you have to be under 30. and I'm 29, luckily. And so I decided that I would enter. So I wrote up this like really bad entry form, and then I paid my boyfriend to help me write my entry, which was really lucky. But he's like a really visionary kind of person, and so we left it to 2 hours before the entries closed. Whoa, I was stressed because we work like a whole year in advance for stuff. Anyway, we got the entry in, and then I went into the state awards, and if I called my sister and said, if I don't win this, it's rigged. Like the whole entry form was written for me. It was amazing. So I got the call in the shortlist, and it was, Anna, you've been shortlisted for the awards. I was like, amazing, but I knew that. So I've manifested the shit out of it. So I went to the interview, loved it, just loved every minute of it. And I'm sure most people don't come out of an interview going, holy shit, that was awesome. Just because I loved the judges, we had so much to talk about, it was great. And then, so I started manifesting for the awards night, and luckily I won, which was great because I'd told everybody I was going to. And then it came around to nationals, and I had to do another interview, and I was like studying crazy. I was like, I have to win this. And then I was like, why am I studying? It's just my story. I know it. Like, what am I trying to study? It was like I wrote my introduction speech here, as I was going to try and read it because I don't know it. Anyway, so I went on this roller coaster ride. So the interviews were on Tuesday morning, and then they announced it on Wednesday. And man, that 48 hours was insane. I kept calling my mum and dad going, I've got it, it's totally fine, I've manifested it. And then I'd call them going, oh no, I don't have it, it's like the girls in my category they're all amazing, I'm not going to get it. And then anyway, luckily I won, which was awesome. It was pretty exciting stuff, so really happy about that. So what's next for Kester Black? $10 million. I'm going to get my company up to $10 million in 4 years. And so the manifestations there, every decision that I now make is for a $10 million company. It's not for a company where we're turning over $1 million or $500,000. So just setting your goals really high. I've never really set my goals really high. Just to be able to stock my clothes in one shop in Dunedin wasn't very high. And now that I've realised that I can actually do anything, set your goals super high, manifest the shit out of it, and get your ducks in a row. So that's how I've used imagination to build my business. So don't get me wrong, there's definitely a time and place for fantasy. There's nothing more that I like doing, racing home on a Monday night and flicking on Game of Thrones. Who's really excited about that one? But instead of trying to escape our everyday lives with Harry Potter of Game of Thrones, maybe we can use the tool of imagination to manifest the things that we want. So I'd like to finish with this quote. The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. So thanks.